The chill of the evening air cut through the narrow streets of Charleston, but it wasn't the cold that made my pulse quicken. No, it was something much heavier, something I had carried for 3 months, carefully wrapped in expectations and quiet hope. It had all been planned to perfection. Cedar and Pine, 7:00 p.m. The same time I had confirmed 2 weeks ago. I stepped out of my car, the silver gray dress I wore fluttering the wind, playing with it, as if mocking the calm facade I tried so desperately to maintain. 2 small, carefully wrapped gifts in my hand. One from my mom, the other from Harper, pressed against my skin, a reminder of everything I had hoped for that night. I had waited for this. The family gathering. The reunion that had been promised countless times over the years, often by Mom, who always said, "We really should all sit down together for a proper meal." But this time, it was me who had taken the reins, who had made it happen. I chose the restaurant. I paid the deposit of $980. I even made sure the menu was personal special dishes for each of them. A baked cod just for Mom. A separate vegetarian meal for Harper. I thought of everything. But as I walked into the restaurant, the sight that greeted me was nothing like the one I had imagined. The parking lot was empty. No red Jeep, no old Honda. No laughter, no chaotic energy of a family excited to be together. Just an empty lot and a flickering neon sign under the dark, empty sky. I hesitated, a sinking feeling forming in my stomach, but I held onto a fragile thread of hope. Maybe they were inside waiting for me. Maybe they had all come early, gathered around a table that was meant to be ours. "Excuse me, I'm Lucy Carter," I said, voice barely above a whisper, as I approached the hostess. She looked up from her screen, her eyes scanning the list before she replied. "Oh, right. The Carter family. But they came in yesterday." Yesterday. The word felt like it hit me from all sides. Yesterday. Yes, Friday, 6:30. 14 people. There was a cake. One woman even brought name cards. Very particular. She smiled, but it felt wrong, as though she had no idea what the words family or gathering truly meant. I laughed, but it was sharp and dry. It faded quickly as I found my voice again. No, it was supposed to be tonight. Saturday, 7:00 p.m. She frowned, her fingers flicking across the screen with practiced indifference. "No, the room was used last night. Would you like to call someone to confirm I didn't need to confirm?" I already knew. Mom had called me 2 weeks ago and promised everything. My chest tightened as I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling as I dialed. 3 rings. Mom picked up. "Hi, sweetheart. What's going on?" Her voice light, careless. "Oh, the dinner was last night. Honey, we thought you were busy, so we just went ahead without you." A soft chuckle followed the kind I knew all too well. The kind that preceded the wound, the one she would claim was just a small thing, but deep down, I knew the truth. I swallowed hard. "Where are you?" "Oh, it was great," she continued, oblivious. "There was cake and games, and everyone asked why you weren't there." The words felt like ice. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The tension in my chest was thick, suffocating. I ended the call without another word, without the usual goodbye. The silence was deafening. The phone still warm in my hand, but the coldness I felt inside reached far deeper than anything the weather could do. My mom's text glowed on the screen 2 weeks ago, confirming everything. Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Cedar and Pine. "The whole family can't wait to see you." But I wasn't there. I was the one left behind. I walked back to my car, my hands shaking. Was it the cold? Or the wave of rejection crashing against me? I couldn't tell. But as I sat there, the weight of it all sank in. I had paid for everything. I had organized this, and I was the one they left out. I didn't drive home. I couldn't. Instead, I drove to Folly Beach, parked my car facing the ocean, and sat there staring at the waves, the cold, saltwater air biting at my face. For nearly 2 hours, I watched the ocean crash against the shore, wondering if somehow the waves could wash away the sting in my chest. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. The feeling of being invisible, of being left behind, wasn't new. It was as familiar as the rhythm of my own heart. Growing up, I was always the low-maintenance one. Mom used to brag to the neighbors about how independent I was, how she didn't have to worry about me the way she did about Harper. But over the years, I realized independent was just a euphemism for you don't need love, so we won't give it. Harper, 3 years younger than me, had dropped out of college 3 times, each time receiving endless comfort and reassurance from Mom. Me. After graduating with honors and landing a job in Atlanta, all I got was a terse text. Glad you're finally doing something useful. And after all that, after everything I did, I had become nothing more than a wallet to them. A walking, breathing source of money and resources. The betrayal ran deeper than the dinner. It was in the air I breathed. The call came late in the afternoon, a time when everything felt far too still. The air in my office hummed with the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. The deadline loomed like a dark storm cloud. But none of that mattered when Mom's voice broke through the tension. Lucy, she's really lost. I think she just needs a fresh start. It was the same script again, the one I had memorized by heart. Harper's latest failure, her latest dream that crumbled. This time, it was cosmetology school. Could you help with the tuition? Just a few thousand. Think of it as investing in your sister's future. The words hung there a weight in my chest, but I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money anyway. Months later, another call, another request. Harper can't afford the security deposit on a new apartment in Savannah. Can you help her out? It's just temporary. She'll pay you back when things settle. The familiar line of reasoning one I had heard countless times. Come on, we're family. Don't be so transactional. I gritted my teeth and wired 1-200 because that's what family does, right? But temporary turned into nearly a year. And then came the dental procedure. Harper needed orthodontic work, claimed it was affecting her job prospects. I had just received my first bonus of the year, a moment I had planned for Seattle, my dream trip, the one I had put off for so long. I was going to book that ticket, but instead, Harper got her new smile. And I got a short, dry thank you. Thanks, sis. The text stung. It always did. The pattern was clear, but I tried to ignore it. One night, in the middle of a stressful project in New York, I received another call from Harper. She had just been dumped by her boyfriend and had nowhere to go. I was running on fumes, barely keeping my eyes open. I texted back, maybe try to figure it out on your own. Not even 30 minutes later, Mom called. Her voice sharp with disappointment cutting through my exhaustion. Lucy, what kind of sister are you? Family means love, not keeping score. I sat, frozen my laptop screen, casting a pale light across my face. Her words echoed in my mind, but all I could hear was the one question I never dared to ask out loud. When did I stop being a person and become nothing more than a resource? Mother's Day, that year, was supposed to be a celebration, a surprise party I had planned for Mom. I spent all my savings to make it happen, restaurant-booked private chef, hired her favorite cake from North Market. But Harper showed up late. No gift. No congratulations. And throughout the party, the whispers began. She's going through a tough time, and still managed to be here. I stood off to the side, pouring drinks, smiling politely, pretending the weight of my resentment didn't gnaw at me. When Mom finally called me over for a photo, she didn't even look up. Lucy, can you help me with the dishes? Let Harper rest. That was how it always went. Harper could do no wrong. She was the broken one who needed fixing, and I was the one who picked up the pieces. Over the years, I had become the invisible one, the one who was never truly seen, only relied upon. I was the support beam holding up a family that couldn't even acknowledge I existed outside of the roles they assigned me. That night at Cedar and Pine changed something inside me. It wasn't just that they had forgotten me or that they had deliberately excluded me. It was the realization that I was no longer willing to stay quiet. I was no longer the afterthought. And I had to make sure they knew it. 3 weeks later, I found myself driving down to Lexington again, back to the same house where all of this began. Harper was having another breakdown. This time, she had just broken up with her boyfriend. Mom called, her voice breaking over the phone. "Lucy, can you come home? She hasn't eaten anything. I think only you can help her feel better." I didn't want to go, but I felt the guilt, the same old guilt that had always been there, like an inherited instinct. I drove down anyway, bringing a few of Harper's favorite snacks. She was sprawled across the couch, wrapped in a blanket, as usual, not even bothering to acknowledge my presence. Mom was in the kitchen making soup, calling out periodically. "How is she? Is she feeling better?" I stayed the night in my old room. Everything still the same. Faded floral bed sheets, old notebooks from college I had left behind. But I couldn't sleep. Exhaustion weighed heavy, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. At around 2:00 a.m., I got thirsty and decided to get a glass of water. As I walked down the hallway, I heard laughter from the living room. I froze. Then came Mom's voice, quiet but unmistakable. She came running back. "The moment you said something still easy to control, just like always." I stood there paralyzed, wondering if I had heard it right. But then Harper's voice cut through the silence, dripping with mockery. "She lives alone, so she clings to the family to fill the void. Say something harsh, and she's back in seconds." The words stung sharper than anything I had ever heard from them. It was the truth, the ugly truth I had tried to deny for so long. They didn't need me. They just needed someone to prop them up when they were too broken to stand. And I had been that person for far too long. But that night, I realized something else. I wasn't going to be their crutch anymore. I wasn't going to let them use me not like this. I stood there frozen in the hallway, the words they said slicing through me like shards of glass. "I just feel bad. All these years, and she's still alone. She buries herself in work, never softens up. No wonder she's still single. Women who live like that, they get cold." Mom's voice trailed off with a sigh, a sound heavy with false sympathy. Then came Harper's laugh, loud and biting. "I used to think if she disappeared, no one would notice until like 3 months later." I don't remember how long I stood there. Time seemed to stop, the cold of the hardwood floor seeping through my bones, settling deep inside. The chill wasn't from the floor, though it was something deeper, something that had been brewing for years. Slowly, I turned away, making sure every step was quiet, careful not to let them know I had heard. I didn't want them to know. I didn't want to give them that power. I retreated back to my room, sitting motionless on the edge of the bed. The soft yellow light from the lamp casting long shadows across my face, like a bitter residue of everything unsaid. They weren't talking about strangers. They were talking about me. The way they spoke of me without hesitation, without shame, it felt like a sharp knife twisting deeper, further into the wound I had tried so long to ignore. The next morning, everything returned to normal. Mom made pancakes, her voice light, as if nothing had happened. Harper, wearing light makeup and a carefree expression, walked into the kitchen, her hair loosely curled. She looked refreshed. Lucy, have something to eat, sweetheart. It's cold out. I made your favorite. I sat down without looking at either of them, picking at my food slowly. Each bite felt like swallowing something I didn't want to admit, something I had tried to bury for so long. Harper chattered casually about a new store opening downtown where she was thinking of applying for a job. I said nothing. I just sat there, numb, my mind far away. After breakfast, I did the dishes in silence. They disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I dried my hands, standing in front of the small mirror near the sink, staring into my own reflection. I had spent years hiding behind silence, behind a smile, behind family. But that moment in the kitchen, I knew I wasn't just the invisible one. I wasn't just a supporting role in their drama. I had been silent because I didn't know how to break free from the story they had written for me. But now, I knew this wasn't the first time they had spoken about me behind my back, and it wouldn't be the last. 3 days after that weekend in Lexington, I sent a message in the family group chat. It was simple but sharp. This Friday, 7:00 p.m. Can everyone come to my place? I have something I need to say. It's serious. At first, there was no response. Then, the following morning, Mom replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Harper read the message, but didn't reply. Uncle Mark, who only ever called when he needed money, sent a smiley face emoji. No one asked what was going on, Lucy. No one cared to know what was really happening. I spent Thursday preparing. I laid out 3 brown envelopes on the dining table. Each one contained a detailed record of everything I had spent on them over the past 6 years. Photocopies of receipts, bank transfers, confirmation texts, and screenshots of Harper promising to pay me back, yet never following through. I even printed a summary report, complete, organized, and exact. The total, over $27,000. By 6:50 p.m., I brewed coffee in the living room. I rearranged the chairs, my hands steady, but my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. By 7:10, they arrived. Mom with that same practiced smile. Harper wearing a gray hoodie, her curly hair loose around her shoulders. No makeup. Dad looking relaxed, like he had just come from a casual church meeting. And Mom, her smile still in place, like nothing had happened. "Your place is always so tidy," she said, setting her purse on a chair. I didn't respond. I simply gestured for them to sit. Once they were settled, I placed the 3 envelopes on the table. This is a summary of everything I've paid for each of you over the past 6 years. I said, my voice calm, controlled. Along with the invoice for the cedar and pine dinner. Mom blinked. Harper scoffed, flipping through a few pages. "You made itemized expense reports? Wow. Impressive." I nodded. "From now on, everything comes with a receipt." Dad leaned back, crossing his arms, his eyes narrowing. "What is this, Lucy? You want your money back now." I met his gaze without flinching. "No, I'm not asking for anything back. But starting today, every act of help will be transparent. Because kindness isn't a blank check, and if it's not respected, it won't be offered." Harper flipped through a few more pages, her voice dripping with mockery. $2,300 for cosmetology school? Seriously, I was like 20 years old. You still kept that? I nodded. Yes, you promised to pay it back, and Mom said it was just in advance. Mom hesitated, a small sigh escaping her lips. Ugh, Lucy, you're being too sensitive. We helped each other out of love. No one forced you. I clenched my fingers, feeling the blood rush to my palms. Love doesn't mean draining someone until they're empty. I opened the summary folder, the pages crisp and clean. I'm not bringing this up to collect a debt. I just need everyone to understand. My silence all these years wasn't acceptance. It was exhaustion. Dad sighed, clearly irritated.
Sounds like you've been reading too many therapy books.
I didn't react. Instead, I pulled out a small notebook and flipped to the last page, the weight of the words I was about to say settling over me like a long-awaited storm. I opened the notebook, the pages cracked from years of neglect, filled with everything I had wanted to say, but never could. The words I had carried in silence for so long now stared back at me, waiting. I read them aloud, my voice steady but unwavering. No one congratulated me when I got my first job. I skipped my one vacation to cover Harper's tuition. I was called cold behind my back because I didn't have a boyfriend. I was excluded from a dinner I paid for. I let the silence settle for a moment, then looked up, my gaze deliberate, locking onto each of them in turn. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air, sharp and clear. For years, I kept quiet, thinking it would keep the peace. But all it did was teach you how easy I was to overlook. Harper, ever the skeptic, leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, a smirk curling on her lips.
You talk like the whole world's out to get you.
I didn't flinch. I looked her straight in the eye, took a slow, deliberate breath, and then spoke the truth I had kept hidden for far too long. It's not the whole world, just the 3 people in this room. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Then each one landed with the finality of a hammer striking an anvil. I'm not the victim. I'm just the only one who's been carrying everything without anyone ever asking if I was okay. Starting today, that ends. I had planned to stop there, to let the truth hang heavy between us, but something happened that made me realize the boundaries I was setting weren't enough. 3 days later, I received a call that stopped me cold, freezing me in place. We're calling to verify a suspicious transaction on a credit card recently opened in your name. It was just used to purchase a tablet for $150 at a store in Savannah. I was paralyzed. I haven't opened any new credit cards, I stammered, my mind racing. The agent paused, then spoke again. The card was registered 3 weeks ago with a billing address at 24 Magnolia Drive. Is that your current address? I felt my stomach drop. That was Mom's house. I hung up the phone, the chill creeping up my spine, an icy grip that wouldn't let go. That night, I opened Instagram. Harper had just posted a photo, a smoothie in hand, a brand new iPad resting on her lap with the caption, "New toy, new mindset. Let the glow up begin." I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around my phone, as if I could crush the image, crush the lie. I had forgiven before because I thought it was out of gratitude, out of love. But this was different. This was fraud. The next morning, I went straight to the bank. After over an hour of going through records, they confirmed it. A credit card had been opened in my name using my Social Security number. The first purchase, an iPad. The second, a premium spa package at Haven and Bloom. I didn't speak much. I just asked them to freeze the account and print the full transaction history. That afternoon, I filed a police report. The officer took detailed notes as I handed over the evidence. He nodded. We'll forward this to the Financial Crimes Unit. If you have any messages or photos that link the use of your information to a specific person, please send those in. The silence was thick in the room, the weight of what I was doing settling in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Harper. "Sis, I'm sorry I used your info to sign up for that spa. Please don't be mad." I didn't know what else to do. I was overwhelmed at the time. I didn't respond. I just read the message, then moved on. But now that message became evidence. I took a screenshot and sent it straight to the police. 3 days later, I received a call from a detective named Reyes. "Miss Lucy Carter, we're investigating a financial fraud case involving a credit card opened under your name. We've gathered enough evidence to confirm unauthorized use of personal information. We'd like to ask whether you want to press charges. If necessary, we can go to the suspect's address for a direct statement." I sat still, my mind replaying Harper's image, the one of her wrapped in a blanket on the couch, crying about how no one understood her. What happens if I don't press charges? I asked quietly, my voice distant. We'll keep the case on file. If there's another offense, we can act immediately. I answered slowly, trying to process it all. I need some time, but I don't want this swept under the rug. Understood. We'll leave the file open for 60 days. I hung up my mind, spinning with the implications of what was to come. That evening, Mom called. Her voice was soft, trying to sound gentle. Lucy Harper's really panicking. She said you misunderstood the credit card thing. It was just a mistake. Please don't escalate this. I held the phone tighter, a fire igniting in my chest. The words were empty, meaningless. They always were. Do you know what billing address was used for the card? The question hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. She went silent, her breath caught in her throat, the weight of the truth pressing down. I let out a faint, almost bitter laugh. I don't need anyone to confess anymore. The truth is already in the system. 2 days after Detective Rhea's call, I received a voicemail from Mom. Her voice cracked a feeble attempt to hold back tears. Lucy, I'm begging you, don't do this. Don't turn this into a grudge. Harper made a mistake, but she's still your sister. I know you're angry, but if you still care about me, please come home. We need to talk face to face. I played that message 5 times. Not to analyze her words, but to be sure of one thing. For the first time in years, Mom was calling not to ask for a favor, but to plead with me. That afternoon, I drove back to Lexington. I brought nothing with me except a printed copy of the case file and a small notebook. The familiar cream-colored house loomed behind the white fence, its presence both comforting and suffocating. I turned off the engine and stepped out, feeling the chill of November slip beneath my collar, the cold creeping in like a familiar adversary. Mom opened the door before I could knock, as if she had been waiting. Come in, sweetheart, she said, her voice soft, like she was trying to smooth over the tension. I made some tea. I stepped inside the house unchanged, but everything felt different. Harper was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale bare of makeup. Dad sat farther back, holding a coffee mug, but not drinking it. The room was so quiet that I could hear the clock ticking. Mom handed me a cup of tea, but I didn't take it. I sat down across from them, opened my notebook and met their eyes. So who wants to start? Harper looked up, her eyes puffy and red, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to. I was desperate. I didn't think you'd find out. Everything's falling apart. I tilted my head, staring at her. Desperate enough to impersonate someone else's identity and use their money for spa treatments and tech gadgets. She pressed her lips together. No reply. Mom stepped in, her voice shaky. Lucy, I'm begging you. You know she didn't do it out of malice. She's just immature. If you report her, her life will be over. I'm asking you. I looked at her, my voice low but firm. You call that immaturity? Did you read the text she sent her friend? I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot. Used my sister's info. Should be fine. She never checks that stuff. Mom's face turned pale, her eyes wide in shock. Dad set his coffee cup down silently, his gaze dropping to the floor. Harper turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. I sat up straighter, my voice steady and sharp. I grew up in a family where silence was treated as virtue and sacrifice was expected. But I'm done being silent. Mom clutched the hem of her sweater, her voice trembling. You're tearing this family apart. Lucy, please. I gave a soft laugh, one that was empty of humor. No, I'm just showing you the consequences of things you've always avoided. I turned to Harper, my voice cold but resolute. I didn't break anything. You were the one who reached in, took what you wanted, and assumed I'd keep smiling and paying like always. But not this time. You crossed the line. Harper buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I didn't mean... I cut her off. Don't say you didn't mean to. You were clear-headed enough to enter Mom's address, smart enough to brag to your friend, and calculated enough to hope I wouldn't notice. So now be strong enough to face it. The room fell into a thick silence. Mom wiped her tears, avoiding eye contact. After what felt like an eternity, Dad finally spoke, his voice low and hoarse. What are you planning to do next? I met his gaze, holding his stare for a long moment before answering. I haven't decided, but let me be clear. I paused, letting the words sink in. From now on, if anyone in this family uses my name, my information, or my trust, there won't be another sit-down like today. I stood, gathered my notebook, and turned to leave. Mom, if you truly want to fix this, you should start by teaching your daughter what boundaries mean. I left that night, the sky darkening as a light drizzle brushed against the windshield. Mom didn't walk me out. Harper didn't look up. Dad didn't say a word. The weight of it all pressed down on me as I drove back to my apartment in Charleston. No music, no GPS, just silence guiding the way. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and opened my laptop. I booked a one-way flight to Asheville, North Carolina, a place no one in my family had ever thought about, let alone cared enough to find. I left my old job behind, completing the handover without a second thought. 2 weeks later, I rented a small apartment near the woods, just a 15-minute drive from downtown. The place was old but clean. The wooden floors still carried the scent of cold air, and the landlord was an elderly woman named Nancy. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally living for myself. For the first time in years, someone asked me, "Are you really okay without tacking on a request or an invoice?" I didn't rush to fill the space with more things. I bought a few essentials, a soft couch, a wooden bookshelf, a desk by the window where I could look out over the misty valley. In the mornings, I brewed coffee. In the afternoons, I read. At night, I cooked simple meals for myself, savoring the quiet solitude. There were no texts from Mom asking to borrow money. No midnight calls from Harper needing help with the power bill. No one was draining me anymore. I started freelancing, doing brand design for small businesses in the mountains. The clients paid on time. They respected my boundaries, and not a single one of them called me cold for knowing how to take care of myself. One morning, as I was watering the plants by the window, the doorbell rang. It was the mail carrier holding a yellow envelope with no return address. Blue ink, neatly written. I opened it, and inside was a handwritten note and a check for $400 with a small note at the bottom. My share of the cedar and pine dinner. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ryan. My younger cousin, the quiet one at family gatherings. He had been there that night, said nothing. Didn't laugh with the others, just watched. The note was short, but the weight of it settled in my chest, like something long overdue. Lucy, I know things went too far. I saw it all, but I stayed quiet because I was scared. It was wrong not to stand with you sooner. This is the least I can do right now. It's not about money. It's about what's right. Thank you for doing what most people in our family never had the courage to. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the letter, my eyes lingering on the last sentence. I no longer felt like the tolerant big sister, or the family ATM, or the invisible shadow who only appeared when someone needed saving. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. The world looked different now. I didn't expect my family to understand me. Mom's approval had lost its weight, and Harper's sympathy. It no longer mattered. I stopped chasing what was never there. I didn't give them my new address. I didn't post on social media. I left no trail. And strangely enough, they didn't come looking. Maybe they finally understood that what they needed wasn't me. It was the version of me they could control, the good daughter who found the money when they asked, smiled through the pain, and stayed silent when they disrespected her. I never reached out again. No New Year's texts. No Christmas cards signed to our beloved daughter. No birthday calls. Of course, I didn't call them either. The last time I heard Harper's name was from an old friend during a random chat at a local bookstore. "Isn't your sister working at that cosmetic store in Greenville? I heard she's been kind of quiet lately." I just smiled. Didn't confirm. Didn't deny. Harper was no longer part of my life. Mom called my old number a few times. I didn't pick up. Later, I changed it. No announcements, no explanations. Because honestly, I didn't owe them anything anymore. I didn't even attend my cousin's wedding. The invitation was sent to my old office. I didn't go. I used to think that if I cut ties, they'd lash out, blame me, try to reel me back into the fold to preserve the family image. But they didn't. Because what they needed wasn't me. It was the version of me who knew her place. The one who always gave. The one who stayed silent when they took. Once I abandoned that role, they had no use for me. Winter in Asheville this year was colder than last, but my little apartment was warmer than it had ever been. I decorated my Christmas tree alone. Each tiny ornament marked something personal, handcrafted by local artists, fair, but not expensive, each one representing a piece of my newfound independence. I baked cinnamon cookies, played jazz, read books under the soft yellow glow of my lamp. For so long, I had feared the label selfish. Every time I said no, I was called unfeeling. But no one ever noticed. I was the one being emptied out. Now I no longer ask permission to live my own life. I don't apologize for disappearing. I don't explain why I never went back. Because simply put, I don't need to. I don't need to be present just to fill the void others left behind. I don't need to pay for someone else's poor choices. I don't need to break myself trying to be the good one for a family that never truly saw my worth. I don't wait for Mom's calls anymore. I no longer hope for an apology from Harper. I've stopped searching for signs that they've finally understood my worth. Their recognition isn't what I need anymore. What I need is clarity within myself. One early spring day, while walking through the woods near my home, I came across an elderly woman trying to find her way back to the parking lot. She looked lost, but not in a way that begged for sympathy. Just the kind of lost that happens when you've wandered for a while, only to realize you've strayed further than you thought. She asked if I could walk with her, and I agreed without hesitation. As we strolled together, she asked, "Have you lived here long? You seem pretty at peace." I paused for a moment, considering the question. Then I smiled a quiet, knowing smile. "I just found peace not long ago, and I plan to keep it for as long as I can." She nodded, her eyes warm, kind. No more words were needed. In that moment, I realized that perhaps only those who've escaped a place they once called home can truly understand the price of peace, and I had paid that price. What I got in return wasn't just the absence of chaos, it was a life that no longer belongs to anyone else. Not to my mother, not to Harper, not to a family that only remembered me when they needed something. Now that life, it's mine. It's the life I fought for, the life I reclaimed, with every step I took away from the roles they had forced upon me. Lucy's story is a sobering reminder that not every relationship labeled family is worth holding on to. Some ties exist only to exploit, not to love. Choosing to walk away isn't cruelty, it's courage. The courage to choose yourself, to live a life no longer ruled by guilt or misplaced duty. In reality, peace often begins with one firm decision, letting go of those who only see you as a given, a resource to be used until they're done with you. What do you think about Lucy's journey? Would you have the strength to do the same to protect yourself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more stories about family loyalty and the choices that shape us.